Welcome to episode 298 of the Working Fans Podcast, where a lot of wrestling to talk this week, as we always have. But like we always say, please, a lot of the people that watch us aren't already subscribed. So if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe
Let us
button.
know.
And I think you're going to like a lot of what we got for you this week. And let's start with the saddest news first, and it can only get better from there, hopefully. It was announced the death of Sabu. It was very ironic, the timing, because this happened just as the dark side was coming out about his uncle. But Dave, when did you first come across Sabu?
First time I came across Sabu was probably the wrestling magazines in I'd say somewhere between 93 and 95. Maybe a little earlier, but not too much earlier. Because I think 95, yeah, I'd seen him in WCW briefly when he had that very small run. But I had seen stuff with him. I saw a few tape trading things because our friend on the show, AJ, actually got a tape from somebody when he was in the service for a bit. And I actually said wrestling magazines. And yeah, I mean, I was familiar that he was a guy that was kind of crazy, breaking tables and doing all this violent stuff. And, and it was kind of like, just, especially back in those days, when the internet wasn't as prevalent and you're just reading about it, it really kind of like drew you to him, these magazines, because it was almost like, like just reading a good book. Like you're reading this and you're like, you're gripped. You're like, is this guy for real? And then you see it and you're like, oh no, this guy is every bit for real. He is just violent. He is just wild. And then you kind of hear the stories about the guy out of the ring. And then you find out, who his uncle is and everything. And it's just, Sabu is I don't know. I mean, he's somebody that should probably be in a wrestling Hall of Fame. He's definitely, it's the cliche, but he kind of really helped make the style that the wrestling business is now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I first heard of him in ECW, and he was the perfect wrestler for their wild, the acrobatics really kind of brought ECW to prominence. In a way, he's really a prototypical pro wrestler, like in definition, because he's all about the gimmick. He gave a lot to the business. And I mean, right up until the end, it was a few weeks, maybe a month ago now, the Joey Janela spring break match against Joey Janela, which sadly I have not yet watched. Have you been able to see it yet?
No, but I've definitely been drawn to watching it now a little more since I heard about his performance and some of the crazy stuff that happens. And then hearing that he might have been on some, type of drugs for that match too, maybe legal drugs too, according to what I had read. But
they sell it at the gas station right around the corner from where I work.
I guess. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what that match even looked like now,
Well, it's funny, like a week ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, my boss at work, who's not a wrestling fan, found this clip of Sabu being thrown through the barbed wire ropes into like a bed of barbed wire. And then he asked, he goes, who is this? Is this some kind of like, is this a big company? And I'm like, no, it's not a big company, but the guy that was in that match is a legend. And then there was an even worse spot, which I've referenced on this show, where he gets like thrown into a board. The board breaks. He goes out of the ring. If you got time, we should probably watch this match for next week. But
yeah, baby.
I mean, I think for people of our age, Sabu is kind of like one of those big figures of the newer era.
Right. Yeah, no. I mean, his feuds with Taz, Rob Van Dam, Terry Funk, all his major feuds that he had in ECW are just legendary. And,
going over to Japan too.
Yeah, Japan. I mean, we'll touch base on it in the next segment too, but just not only his acrobatics, but just the brawling and the wildness to him. Like he was one of a kind. And by the way, also too, shout out to all the companies, WWE, AEW, TNA, everyone I saw gave a really nice tribute for him this week.
That's what I was just about to say. The reactions you had, Taz. I saw like a social media post with Taz talking about Sabu. Rob Van Dam trained with Sabu under the Sheik, been good friends for years. It's interesting to hear what fellow wrestlers have to say. It's interesting to see how the companies are portraying it. And we talked about the time frame. It was coincidental, the death coming the week that his uncle's Dark Side of the Ring hit Vice TV this week. Dave, what did you think about this episode?
One of my favorite episodes, honestly. I thought it was very refreshing that we had a Vice 2 where for a Dark Side of the Ring where it wasn't centered around somebody's obsession or addiction with drugs, alcohol. He didn't beat up his wife or anything like that. He
or they didn't report on any of it.
No, we're aware of. I mean, he did have a gambling addiction. They addressed that. He definitely had an addiction to pro wrestling, and but I find the Sheik to be one of the most fascinating characters. I mean, the kayfabe level of like going to restaurants, not speaking English, acting kind of crazy and bizarre, and having people call him the Sheik in the household, or hanging up if you didn't ask for the Sheik, having a party with wrestlers, but you still kept the baby faces and the heels separate. Incredible. I just love it. I love the time period he was doing this stuff. Like, you see these old black and white matches with pro wrestling. You're usually seeing, we're trading like, wrestling moves. We're trading hammer locks, headlocks. No, he's, he's brawling with people. He could wrestle though. You can see that too. He had an amateur wrestling background, I believe they said, an amateur boxing background, and he was a legit tough guy. The stuff that he would do to like get heat was legendary. I mean, you see like, when someone tried to shoot him and he stabbed somebody, like that story where he stabbed someone in the chest and opened him up and the guy's guts almost fell out. It's like, that's incredible. All this stuff is crazy. I mean, I love the story about him as a promoter and how he had his best friend kind of as the figurehead, and his wife was doing everything behind the scenes.
His father-in-law was actually the figurehead of the company. His wife worked closely with him behind the scenes.
Yes, you're right. Sorry, it's his father. Yeah, and I just, I like that. I loved all the, the Jim Cornette talking about he made, I think, $400,000 that he claimed he made that year on paper, that he probably made more. And it was like the equivalent of $2 million at the time. And, it's just very interesting. And, to see how much his grandkids loved him, despite the fact that like all this craziness was going on, and they still felt like the center of attention and they loved him. And to hear Sabu, who's now passed away, get emotional talking about his uncle and everything he did for him. And then to hear about that fire match where he didn't know Anita spoke English, and Anita says to him, I think we're in trouble. That whole series. Yeah, you have to just watch this. If you haven't seen this, even if you don't this is just a great documentary to watch. I'm absolutely very interested in the Sheik. And this made me, I'm going to make some homework for myself here. I'm not going to probably do this next week. I'll tell you that right now, guys. But I am interested in seeing more matches with the Sheik. Like, I just find him to be such a unique character. And, the way he ended his career, I remember that moment, too, where it was Sabu and Mr. JL, Jerry Lynn. And I did not know Sheik had a broken leg. And he still gets up, walks around, and throws the damn fireball. Like, insane.
I'm going to say episode 300, 2 weeks away. Maybe we'll get some Sheik matches in. And
sure.
I really like this Dark Side of the Ring. They covered a lot. And there are going to be a couple things I'm going to bring up because I believe I heard these from Brian Solomon's book. I'm going to say allegedly because I'm not meaning any disrespect to the Sheik. In Brian Solomon's book, in this episode, they talked about how close he was with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
But in the book, I believe there was allusions made to affairs. And I thought that would have been something to bring up during this, that his wife stuck with him even through like affairs. And I believe there was drinking and drugs at one point. So it's interesting sometimes to see the choices that they don't include. It's probably out of respect. And with Brian Solomon's book, it was such a deep dive.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to have read the book a while ago when it came out, and then to see what's covered in this dark side of the ring. And this is a guy that's been one of these huge figures in pro wrestling that you don't get a lot of this behind the scenes from, because by his design, he was so good at kayfabing and keeping it behind. But it was it was really cool to see Sabu talking about his uncle, and
Mhm.
it kind of hit in a different way since we lost Sabu this week.
Yeah. Have you? I've seen. I can tell you off the top of my head, and obviously I've seen it through tapes. But I saw two matches with the Sheik that stick out in my head. One was Bobo Brazil at Cobo Hall. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, three. Mark Lewin. I saw one with him, and then another one I saw him throw a fireball and pin Andre the Giant.
Oh, wow. I have not seen any Sheik matches outside of what they showed in here. I mean, I might have seen that fire match at one point because
Yeah, I never seen
um,
that.
I'm very interested in Onita's FMW. I have, I believe, a couple of their shows on one of my hard drives. And that was a match that when you hear about it, it sounds so wild. And then
Yeah.
to see it, especially Kawasaki Stadium for extreme Japanese wrestling, that's the place to be. And isn't it interesting that Sabu kind of followed his Sheik in the Sheik's footsteps of staying in the ring just till the end, almost kind of beyond when their body could handle it. It's
Hmm.
interesting the parallels you could see from looking back at Sabu's career given his death and then what they cover in this documentary.
Absolutely.
That was something great we watched this week, and there's been a little talk about WWE lately because given how WrestleMania played out, now we are one pay-per-view past WrestleMania, and The Rock hasn't reinserted himself into WWE yet. So I wanted to take a minute to kind of speculate, maybe fantasy book. What do you think The Rock is going to do next when he appears back in WWE?
I think he's going to make some appearances here and there. I think ultimately
Does
something's
he
going to.
continue the storylines that he laid out when he left?
Yeah, I think something's going to have to happen with him and Cena and Cody, and there has to be some kind of conclusion on this. Maybe Cena ends up going against Rock after all is said and done. Maybe Cody joins forces with The Rock. Maybe Cena. I don't know, but I feel like something is in the works here. I mean, it could be even. Hey, here's a storyline idea, right? Maybe Cena and Cody are going to wrestle, and The Rock, they do a double turn, and Rock actually helps Cody, and Cody does join the dark side, almost like a Star Wars, right? Like the Emperor wants Luke Skywalker to take out his father, Darth Vader, except for in this case, Cody actually does it, and then it's Roman Reigns who's going to come and make the save, and Roman Reigns who's going to have that big match with Cody as the baby face, and Roman will eventually wrestle Rock at this coming WrestleMania finally, and that'll be The Rock's last match. I don't know. I'm just
I
throwing stuff
like
out
that,
there.
and that's kind of a way to send off Cena too, because it's kind of like, where is this heel Cena character going? Who's going to be the baby face to take him over? And you just put out a very plausible thing to kind of continue that on. It's really weird how The Rock, for a couple years, has inserted himself around WrestleMania and then kind of dipped out. Was it
Mm-hmm.
last year or no, this year we thought we were going to get Rock
Yep.
versus Roman. It didn't happen.
Right.
That's still got to be coming somewhere down the line, right?
I would think that's what the end game is still, right? Rock and Roman is the biggest match. And I mean, hey, you could even if Roman ends up winning the title from Cody this year, and The Rock feels like he can get away with it, maybe that leads to maybe we're booking for WrestleMania 43 at this point, right? I don't know, but I mean, I do think that is the final boss, as he says, right? That is the end game.
Do you personally have any excitement or interest in The Rock coming back? Or I'm going to give my feelings on it. I think The Rock feels a little played out now. I'd
Mhm.
still like to see that Roman match, but I don't know what he's bringing to the product right now by appearing, besides like a little ratings bump, which I think he's hurting each time he comes out.
I think that with Rock, I'll take a wait and see approach, but he's not an automatic for me right now. It's not like, oh, The Rock's here. Awesome. I think that's been played out. I'm not just excited to see The Rock anymore. But if The Rock comes back and has the proper story, obviously he's the biggest star in Hollywood. He's a big deal. With the proper story, it could be very interesting. It could be entertaining, but we're gonna have to see, because we've seen some good stuff, but we've seen some bad stuff. It's been very hit or miss right now. So
yeah, hopefully it gets better. I mean, it's gonna get better for us because we're gonna do another great comparison you put together. And I mean, this has to be. I like to think a lot of the ones you put together are difficult decisions, but Miracle Violence Connection or Doom, two great NWA hard hitting tag teams. I'm gonna start. Because I don't even know who I'm going to pick. How did you decide to put these two teams together, and who's your choice?
I mean, I've done so many of them now. I start to really look back and see teams I haven't done, but I always try to make it an interesting matchup. And when I looked at this, I just thought, oh, wow, like, how have I not done this one? Like Butch Reed and Ron Simmons, they just physically match up so well with Gordy and Williams, who, we've seen have those classic with the Steiner brothers when we look back, right, where they were able to, one of the few teams to really beat up the Steiners. And but Simmons and Reed, they could hang with the Steiners as well. So, I just looked at it and I thought this is just a matchup, when especially Ron Simmons. I really wish, and I think Bill Watts wanted to do it, but it never happened. I really would have liked to seen Ron Simmons defend the WCW heavyweight title against Steve Williams, who was working for All Japan and WCW around that time. And I thought that would have been a great matchup. I just thought they matched up so well. Terry Gordy, though, Butch Reed, at this point when they were each in WCW, veterans already. Who would I pick here? I'd have to go with Gordy and Williams. When I think about the better teamwork and stuff like that, they had more longevity together. They seemed to really gel better together. As far as like believability, it's a tie. You know what I mean? You look at either one of these teams, like, you don't want to mess with any of these four men. And who would win in a shoot fight? I think I always take Ron Simmons no matter what. So, but yeah, but as far as better team goes, I'm going to go with the Miracle Violence Connection.
I mean, that's the main matchup, really, is Steve Williams and Ron Simmons, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the two you want to see get in the ring. Nothing against Butch Reed, but Ron Simmons is just such a badass.
Yeah.
And seeing him tangle up with Terry Gordy would be cool, but especially Dr. Death Steve Williams, who is all-time regarded as kind of one of those toughest guys to ever get in the ring. So that's what I think makes this exciting. I really want to pick Doom, but I feel like it's got to be Miracle Violence Connection.
Mm-hmm.
And those are just two great classic WCW tag teams. Last week, we talked about watching 3 Billy Graham matches this week. And I like that we found 3 different kind of matches. The links for all these matches, and I'll say it for each match we put up, are going to be available in the description for the match. Billy Graham versus Abdullah the Butcher. What are some of your takeaways from this match? Because I found this match all 3 of these matches are very interesting, but I almost found this the most interesting of the 3.
Well, they were kind of shooting an angle. It's an interesting time. This is Billy Graham in NWA. He's not got the karate pants here. He's back to like the tie-dye here, and he's kind of getting back on track, but he's much older than he was in his obviously Hall of Fame run. And, they're doing the arm wrestling gimmick, and they're trying to set up an arm wrestling thing with Barbarian. But before we do that, he's got to have this match with Abdullah. And I like that he called him the fat man from the Sudan. It's a little thing, but Abdullah was so intimidating around this time, but it's like Billy's like, I'm going to talk my trash, and I don't give a shit who this fat slob is. He's not going to come over here and just stab you with a fork. I'll beat his ass. And it's like, that's the vibe he puts out. And I think that's what really makes Billy Graham. It's just that, and again, watching this match, and I love modern wrestling. I think we're in one of the best times. But there is something, the more we go back and watch some of this older wrestling, where I'm like, damn, these guys, I truly get now, like with Jim Cornette, Terry Funk, and some of the great ones said, Jerry Lawler, talking about getting the most out of the least. Because these guys aren't really doing much but hitting each other, chopping each other, maybe a bear hug. But damn, it looks like a real fight when they get out there. And, much like we talked about with the Sheik earlier, just pulling like a wire around somebody's neck, something that's just like, man, you believe it more than I do now. So yeah, this was fun. It's not that long. I want to say we'll have the clip. It's probably like 6-7 minutes, and just the way everything was set up and the way Barbarian was even positioned here as like a future star. Like, I loved all of this.
Yeah, you got the DQ, so Abdullah didn't have to lose clean. It's interesting you said it the way they did. They made the most with the least, because I thought this was like more of an extreme match than I expected to see Billy Graham in, kind of doing the brawling with Abdullah, choking him with the cable. It was a great like NWA angle match.
Yeah.
Complete with the brawling. It wasn't the Billy Graham I expected to see, because Billy Graham's kind of so synonymous with that WWF era. And that takes us to our second match, which was Billy Graham versus Bruno Sammartino. I like the old footage of this. I liked seeing, because Billy Graham, when you look at him, he's kind of that prototypical pro wrestler. If you see a pro wrestler drawn in a comic book, like we did early on in our career, we had a comic book approach us, and the protagonist of their comic looked like a Billy Graham. He was that newer brand of wrestler, the muscle man, the loudmouth. Bruno Sammartino was just one of those tough, well-built guys that would get in there with anyone. And this was a great battle between the two. Had you seen this match before, and what did you think about it?
A long time ago, but one thing, I'm just going to echo everything you said, except for I'm going to add something in here, because that's pretty much how I felt. I love the old footage. I love this, the style clash, like I said, Bruno, like, that blue collar guy, Billy Graham, flashy. But there's a little thing here. Vince McMahon Jr., or Vince McMahon, because I guess he wasn't a junior, likes the, on commentary, he notes that Billy Graham opted not to compete in the Battle Royal tonight and decided to go straight for the world title shot. And the Baltimore, Maryland Athletic Commission approved it to give him a shot. It's a small little thing, but it's like, oh, I didn't know there was a Battle Royal on that card. So a lot of times these wrestlers would compete twice and they'd be in the Battle Royal. And I don't know. I don't remember them noted if Bruno was in the Battle Royal, but I thought that would have been interesting too, because that could play into the match. But I just really like how real that made it feel. That, okay, Bruno wants to be fresh for this world title shot, and the Athletic Commission approved it. And it's like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is interesting note, and it is one of those staples of like old time wrestling, where you'd have a few matches on the card and then there'd be a battle royal with everybody on the card involved. Something we've seen in New Heights Wrestling in more recent years. And the most recent match of the three that we watched, Billy Graham versus Barry Horowitz from Wrestling Challenge. I really enjoyed this because I remember Wrestling Challenge, but I don't remember Billy Graham ever being on it. And just seeing him in a more modern time with Barry Horowitz, it was very cool, and it was able to see like another era of Billy Graham. So I kind of like how each of these matches was different and had its own feel to it.
He comes out to the theme from Jesus Christ Superstar here, which I thought was interesting, because that's, at a time when WWF allowed, you to use actual famous entrance music still. This is kind of before copyrights. And one thing else I got to note too here is, again, simple, all right? He's just doing like you noticed it off. I think we talked about off air with Sheamus. He's doing the shots in the corner there. What does Sheamus call that, Joe?
Oh, the 10 beats of the Bowdrin, the one where he's holding the guy over the top rope and
Yes.
thumping his chest.
Yeah.
It was cool to see that. I was wondering, is this something that Vince has wanted to see for years, and he wanted to find the right guy to put it on?
But just the way Horowitz, to give him some credit here, some shine, just the way he sold everything for Billy, and the way he sold the bear hug, it just really, really puts a spotlight like back in the day how important these enhancement matches are and how, a great wrestler like a Barry Horowitz or a Bob Cook could really take a guy to the next level.
Yeah, and this was interesting because this was an enhancement match for a guy that had like been a previous star of WWF, and this was, I don't know what comeback this was from, but I really enjoyed seeing it because when I wanted to put together 3 matches, this is the first one I saw, and just watching it, it's like, all right, it has that 90s feel I remember. And then it has this guy that I had never really watched a lot before. And I'm like, oh, wow, Billy Graham popped up here. And he had that later look that was cool to see as well. And Randy Osgood, thank you for joining us today. And a perfect transition because Randy also joined us for WWE Backlash. We had a great watch along for this. Overall, what were your feelings of the show?
So I was actually thinking about this when people talk about WWE and AEW because I saw some discussion came up this week. Will Ospreay was talking about how they have the better wrestling and we're the better wrestling company by far, and I think there's some truth to like as far as the in ring and the athleticism goes with everything. But I'm like, why do I enjoy WWE shows more right now? Like, what is it? And I thought this Backlash pay per view was a great example. Pacing. There is something about the way they pace their shows, and the 5-match card helps obviously, but everything just feels really straight to the point. And I thought this was a solid show. Obviously, I thought we kicked off great with Jeff Cobb, surprise, and Jacob Fatu. Not sure why Jeff Cobb is there, but Solo brought him in, and now we're teasing that Jacob Fatu, Jeff Cobb, and we got the Reliance. Lyra Valkyria, I thought had an outstanding performance. Really raised her stock in her win over Becky, but I thought Becky did a great job of putting her over, but also still looking like a star. Dominic Mysterio and Penta, a lot of shenanigans, probably more in this match, but it was a nice breath of fresh air still to kind of, after having, like 2 big time matches, like Dom, I thought it was, entertaining. Gunther, Pat McAfee was what it was. We talked about this. It might have been more interesting if we had the sound on because we couldn't really hear the commentary with Michael Cole. And I heard a few things that was the big story. And of course, John Cena and Randy Orton. Randy Orton is, I felt like this was really a good display of Randy Orton. Like he really worked around John Cena's shortcomings a lot here. I thought this match built well. It was a little slow, but I thought it built well. But, in the end, Cena's still champ. And you actually broke the news to me when I woke up the morning. I saw that John Cena had put R-Truth to a table at a press conference. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So that's not really on Backlash, but I think it's interesting coming out of Backlash that I wonder where that's going to go next. Is Truth going to have a match with Cena? Like, I was telling you I thought could happen, or like what's going to happen there?
Yeah, the whole WWE show as a whole, every match had a story. There was great in-ring action with it. The Jeff Cobb debut was obviously big. And that ties in with today as we're taping because tonight SmackDown's going to be the first SmackDown after the show. So will we hear from Solo and Jeff Cobb? Will Jeff Cobb speak? Could he just be that heater in Solo's corner? It's going to be interesting to see what goes on with the bloodline. I really like that the show, it's 5 really good matches. And then you had that post-show angle to you off, which is huge. Sounds like they could be building that for Saturday night's main event. Overall, I thought this show was, I'd call it like an A show. It was an A plus. It didn't not blow me out of the water, but it was a good show. You had a variety of different matches. And what was your match of the night? Because mine was Becky and Lyra, hand down.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. That's definitely the match tonight, I thought.
And if you want to see all our thoughts on WWE Backlash, check out the live watch along replay. Start it when the show starts, and you can see what we think match to match. And Randy Osga had joined us for that, and he gave us an interesting question that we are bringing to this week. And it's give a 5-match dream AEW versus WWE card. So if we're going to go dream card, the main event's got to be title for title, right? So it's John Moxley versus which other title do you think?
I get some heat for this, but if we're gonna do another world out of current world champions, like it probably should be Cena, right? But honestly, I'd like to see Jey Uso because that's a matchup I don't really recall seeing on a big stage. This is a different Jey Uso, and like I would do that world title versus world title. And I'll also say I know we're gonna go down here, but like a match I want to see already. I mentioned on the watch along, but the first one that really pops out to me is AJ Styles and Will Ospreay.
Yeah, that'd be great because, I mean, they had to have wrestled before, but now the maturity they have, like Ospreay being around for years, getting established in AEW, that would be a great high flying match. So you got Ospreay, AJ. I think Mox and Jey Uso is good as well because you would think Moxley versus Cena, but I feel like Moxley versus Jey would give you just so much bigger of a match.
Here's one. How about Jacob Fatu versus the Continental Champion, U.S. Champion Jacob Fatu versus Okada?
Ooh, that would be a great hard hitting match. I really like that one. I'm trying to come up with a ladies match to give you, but it's tough because so many of the ladies have gone back and forth between them. Maybe who would Willow be good up against in WWE?
I mean, and you'd have to build her up, but I mean Willow and I think she's injured right now too, but Bianca Belair could be a lot of fun. You know,
Ooh, that would be a good one.
Yeah, she's so strong. She could probably pick up Willow and athleticism. Another one, you want to talk about that WWE style, right? You talk about, maybe a little more storytelling like a Randy Orton. Well, what about that guy who's like super athletic and, he's maybe beating up his body a little bit, but like Kenny Omega, Orton Omega?
Oh, I did not even think about that. Now I want to see that one in ring.
That might be 5, by the way, too. I don't know.
I'm sure. Yeah, we're gonna go past 5 because now it's like I'm going right from that match to what kind of tag team match would I want to see?
Right.
I'm gonna say Axiom versus like the Crew, or Axiom and Nathan Frazier versus Top Flight. That would be a great high flying match.
Yeah. Another one too. We could do Axiom, Nathan Frazier versus the Young Bucks, even.
Oh, damn.
They could tear it up. Yeah.
I think a great mid-card match would be like Max Caster versus The Miz.
Yeah. Or how about this? Even though he's a champion, WWE, heel heat versus heel heat. Dominic Mysterio versus MJF.
Ooh. Who would be forced to be the babyface in that one?
And how about instead of like the standard tag match too, you could do like one of those TLC ladder matches, the Young Bucks, Axiom, and then maybe hey, throw a TNA team in there. Let's get the Rascals in here, right?
That would be solid.
Yeah, some interesting stuff out there. This just really just says that there's just so much talent right now in wrestling. with WWE, AEW, and a lot of the other surrounding companies too. It's just great to see that, this is kind of the last really forbidden door, because WWE is working with a lot of different people now, and AEW is working with a lot of different people now.
Yeah, it's great to see that wrestling is branching out, even if they do keep it within like certain shows and partners. It's great that we're seeing more of that cooperation between companies. And guys, that was episode 298. We are plugging along to episode 300. I mean, I think I don't know if when we started this, we could have imagined that we would have made it to 300, but I don't think we also would have thought we've worked with some of the great authors we have, like the ones in these commercials. Author Ray Lopez presents Lockup, Professional Wrestling in Our World. Lockup dives headfirst into the colorful world of professional wrestling. Explore the iconic characters, careers, matches, history, and families, and delve into the bizarre and fascinating entwining of professional wrestling and film, television, football, politics, gender, and race. Pre-orders are available now on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com. This is the perfect gift for the wrestling fan in your life. Pick up a copy today on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com.
Hey, all you got young wrestling fans out there, listen, Old Black Bart has got a book. It's called Wrestle. Black Bart. It's got some dead good stories in there about some dead good wrestlers.
Read stories of Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erich, Scott Casey, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, Mr. Fuji, Ron Bass, Bruiser Brody, Mike Davis, the Grappler, and many others.
And I guarantee you one thing, that it'll be the best dadgum read you've had in a long time.
Get your book today at Russellville.com or on Amazon. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.
Hey fans, it's the man they call Dave with producer Joe, and you probably know us as the commentary team for New Heights Pro Wrestling, but when we're not doing that, we got a podcast.
That is the Working Fans Podcast, where we talk pro wrestling, comedy, MMA, and so much more.
And tell them about that signature segment.
Oh, you talk about the 531?
You know I am.
That is a homegrown creation that has been our namesake. And if you want to know our namesake, we got Chevy, AJ Strange Brew, as well as the two of us.
And why don't you go to our channel, like, subscribe, show us some love.
Rate, review, all of it.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.